This is the case of Sammy.
Is Sammy completely blind?
No, he has a fair amount of useful vision. He has glaucoma. His primary visual problem right now is the limitation of his visual field. It's like the way racehorses wear blinders that cut off their peripheral vision. Gradually, Sammy's peripheral vision is deteriorating. The central avenue that he can see is growing smaller as the blind spots on the sides grow larger.
Oh, that must be terribly frightening for him. Why is that happening?
With glaucoma, the pressure inside the eye is elevated by a buildup of fluid. The pressure against the optic nerve at the back of the eye causes the visual problems.
And the tunnel vision keeps getting worse?
Yes, the tunnel typically becomes progressively smaller with time. Right now, Sammy has a visual field of about 40 degrees. Eventually, he will lose all sight. One of our jobs is to prepare him academically for that day when he can no longer see at all.
What do you mean by 40 degrees?
Well, if you look straight ahead, you can see all that's in front of you and the areas in the periphery to your left and right. That would be a visual field of about 180 degrees. Your visual field is probably a little less than that since you really can't see all the way over to the sides of your head. Sammy's visual field has narrowed down to about 1/4 of that, just a 40-degree band directly in front of him. Additionally, he also has a nystagmus. That's like a shaking of the eye, an involuntary rhythmic motion that sometimes occurs.
Is that shaking painful?
No, but it can further limit Sammy's ability to focus.
Don't his eyes hurt from all that pressure?
He's taking medication to reduce the pressure. He occasionally rubs his eyes, and he has had headaches in the past. Recently, the medication has been doing a good job on the pressure, and he hasn't had headaches.
The two educators shifted their discussion from the physiology of Sammy's condition to the educational strategies necessary to effectively teach him. Mrs. K explained that Sammy would need instruction in both printed language and Braille. Sammy was able to read at about a third-grade level, but his visual abilities had been decreasing over the years. In anticipation of his further loss of sight, Mrs. K and his prior teachers had worked with him on learning to read and write in Braille. Mrs. K recommended that Sammy continue in functional literacy instruction with standard print and Braille.
I also want to forewarn you of one odd behavior that Sammy does. In fact, quite a few blind students do this. I call it flicking. Sometimes he'll flick his hand back and forth above his eyes. It changes the flow of light into the eye from light to dark, a quick alternation.
Why does he do that?
No one can be sure, but many think it provides a form of visual stimulation. You can simply redirect him to his task. Don't make a big deal out of it, just don't be surprised if you see it.
Okay, I got it. I'm wondering about how Sammy will fit in and make friends with the other students. Should I tell all the students about his visual impairment on the first day? Or maybe I should avoid drawing attention to him. It would be embarrassing to have your teacher tell everyone about your disability. And how will he get around the classroom and the school?
Don't worry, he'll have no trouble getting around. As for the first day of school, I think you and I can pull Sammy aside and ask him how he wants to handle things. I've worked with all sorts of kids. Some want to tell the world about their disability, and some want to hide it and try to remain unnoticed. I generally encourage students to be honest with themselves and their peers without making too big a deal of it. What we want for Sammy's peers is an understanding that he's just a kid like everyone else. No better, no worse. We can teach them about his disability in order that they can understand it and get over it, move past the novelty of it. Then they can play with and care about Sammy as a person.
I think you're right. My students are usually curious about new and different things. One year, I had a student with no hair. She had cancer and she was undergoing chemotherapy treatments. At first, the kids were dazzled by the bald head and the whole idea of cancer. We talked quite a bit about cancer and the treatments. Pretty quickly, though, cancer was boring and games of kickball were the priority. They just went on with life as usual. The strangeness wore off and being friends took over.
Exactly. We educate the peers about the condition so that being friends can take over.
Mrs. Kopriva seemed to say that if Sammy wants to try to hide his visual disability, he should be supported in doing so.